Mr. Raisi will be inaugurated in early August and will have significant influence over domestic policy and foreign affairs. But in Iran's political system, it is the country's supreme leader Ayatollah Ali Khamenei, the top religious cleric, who has the final say on all the state matters. Iran is run according to conservative Shia Islamic values, and there have been curbs on political freedom since its Islamic revolution in 1979. Many Iranians saw this latest election as having been engineered for Mr. Raisi to win and shun the official figures showed voter turnout was the lowest ever for a presidential election at 48.8% compared to more than 70% for the previous vote in 2017. The 60-year-old cleric has served as a prosecutor for most of his career. He was appointed head of the judiciary in 2019, 2 years after he lost by a landslide to Hassan Rouhani in the latest presidential election. Mr. Raisi has presented himself as the best person to fight corruption and solve Iran's economic problems. Our people's grievances over shortcomings are real, he said as he cast his vote in Tehran. He is fiercely loyal to Iran's ruling cleric and has ever been seen as a possible successor to Ayatollah Khamenei as the country's supreme leader. Many Iranians and right groups have pointed to Mr. Raisi's role in the mass executions of political prisoners in the 1980s. He was one of our 4 judges who oversaw death sentences for about 5,000 prisoners according to Amnesty International. The Ebrahim Raisi has risen to the presidency instead of being investigated for the crimes against humanity of murder, enforced disappearances, and torture is a grim reminder that impunity reigns supreme in Iran, said Amnesty Chief Agnes Kalamard. Iran has never acknowledged the mass executions, and Mr. Raisi has never addressed the allegations against his role in them. Amnesty also says that as head of the judiciary, Mr. Raisi oversaw impunity for officials and security forces accused of killing prosecutors during unrest in 2019. Mr. Raisi has promised to ease unemployment and work to remove US sanctions that have contributed to economic hardship for ordinary Iranians and caused widespread discontent. BBC Persian correspondent Kasra Naji adds that under Mr. Raisi, Iran's headliners will seek to reinforce a potential system of Islamic government, possibly meaning more controls on social activities, fewer freedoms and jobs for women, and tighter control of social media and the press. The headliners are suspicious of the West, but both Mr. Raisi and Supreme Leader Khamenei favor a return to an international deal on Iran's nuclear activity. The Joint Comprehensive Plan of Action signed in 2015 gave Iran relief from the Western sanctions in return for limiting its nuclear activities. The US pulled out of the deal in 2018, and President Trump's administration reimposed crippling limits on Iran's ability to trade. Mr. Raisi was among the officials sanctioned. Iran has responded by restating nuclear options that were banned under the deal. Talks aimed at resurrecting the deal are ongoing in Vienna, with President Joe Biden also keen to revive it. But both sides say the other must make the first move. The election was engineered to pave the way for Mr. Raisi to win. This has aligned a good number of Iranians already deeply discontented with their living conditions in an economy that is crippled by US sanction but also mismanagement. The result of the election will not help with their concern and may even lead to more instability at home. In the past few years, Iran has witnessed at least 2 rounds of serious nationwide protest, with hundreds, some say thousands, killed. Mr. Raisi taking the presidency, the headliners will have taken all the centers of power, the executive branch as well as the legislative and the judiciary. Iran will be a more closed society. Freedoms will likely be curtailed even more than before. The regime will look like the regime sorry. The regime will look to China to help the economy out of deep crisis. There will be more tension with the West. Indirect talks between Iran and the US in Vienna over reviving the nuclear deal may face more uncertainty. There are already reports that the talks will now break up for a few weeks, allowing all sides to take stock of the new reality in Iran. Almost 600 hopefuls, including 40 women, registered to be candidates in the election. But in the end, only 7 men were approved last month by the 12 jurists and theologians on the Guardian Council, an unelected body that has the ultimate decision with regard to candidates' qualifications. 3 of those candidates subsequently pulled out before polling day. In response to this, some dissidents and reformists vowed to boycott the election. Before he withdrew, reformist candidate Mohsen Mehrazadeh hinted that the vote would be a foregone conclusion, saying during a candidate's TV debate that the ruling cleric had aligned sun, moon, and the heavens to make one particular person the president, according to The Economist. Meanwhile, former President Mohammad Ahmadinejad, one of those barred from running, said in a video message that he would not vote, declaring, "I do not want to have a part in this sin." Priyanka Rath for Fosak TV, USA.